This week on Choice Hacking. Today we're diving into the story of a true brand underdog, the Mini, a tiny car that's accomplished big things. The Mini was created to be a penny-pinching, fuel-saving car for post-war Brits. But now, its unconventional design and savvy psychological marketing moves have created a global cult following in the form of motoring clubs, YouTube channels, and it was even voted the world's second most influential car, right behind Ford's Model T and ahead of the Volkswagen Beetle. Austin Powers drove one into the past.
Your spy car's a Mini?
It's not the size, mate. It's how you use it.
Michael Caine led a small army of Minis when he pulled off The Italian Job.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off!
And you probably remember the iconic chase scene in The Bourne Identity, where Matt Damon drives a Mini the wrong way down the banks of the Seine.
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
But how did Mini go from an uncool car to a cult classic? Well, it turns out there's some psychology at play, used purposely or not, that helped Mini transform this spunky little car's destiny. I'm Jennifer Clinehens, and you're listening to Choice Hacking, a podcast about applying behavioral science and psychology to business, marketing, experience, design, and more. Join me today as we unpack the psychology that Mini and its parent brand, BMW, used to make it irresistible. But before we get started, I want to take a few seconds to tell you more about me and Choice Hacking. Choice Hacking isn't just a podcast. We also offer online courses, team training, coaching, and consulting to brands of all sizes, including startups, scale-ups, and Fortune 500 brands. Led by me, Jen Clinehens, founder and managing director. We're based out of London and New York City and have clients across the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, and more. Some of the amazing clients our team have worked with include brands like Starbucks, McDonald's, T-Mobile, AT&T, O2, Lloyds Bank, and big ad agencies like Havas and DDB. If you're interested in learning more about how we can help you grow your business with behavioral science, AI, and marketing psychology, visit choicehacking.com to learn more. That's choicehacking.com. Now, on to the show. Mini is one of the best-loved car brands on Earth. But Minis aren't as fast as a Lamborghini or as sexy as a Ferrari. They aren't as tough as a Jeep or as luxurious as a Mercedes. In fact, they're a rare example of a product that started out being practical but became cool. Right after the end of World War II, British automakers were actually designing bigger and bigger cars. But they were forced to reconsider this strategy when the 1956 Suez Crisis unfolded in the Middle East and Europe, raising the prices of oil and fuel and hindering post-war recovery. Seeing the writing on the wall, Sir Leonard Lord of the Morris Car Company built a small car that could carry 4 adults with a low price and even better fuel economy. The Mini was born. It eventually became a cultural icon in Britain and a symbol of the swinging 1960s in England at a time when London was the coolest place on earth to be. Now, it might surprise you to learn that initial sales of the Mini were worryingly low. That is, until some icons of British pop culture came to its rescue. People spotted driving Minis in the 1960s included the Beatles, comedian Peter Sellers, and even Princess Margaret. And when British racing legend John Cooper got his hands on it in 1961, his Mini Cooper became a powerful force on the rally car circuit. The thing that actors and musicians and racing royalty liked so much about the Mini was its unique design. Minis were cute, but they also came out with lots of limited production editions, with interesting interior and exterior combinations, special decals. You could even get a Union Jack flag painted on the roof and the rearview mirrors. Researchers actually studied Mini Cooper drivers and found that they underestimate the faults of the car because they love its design so much. It's called the aesthetic usability effect, and it describes the halo effect that good design can have on people's perceptions of how well a product actually works. If a product is beautifully designed, people believe it's more usable, more functional, and more reliable than it actually is. And looking different than 99% of cars also works in Mini's advantage because it helps people recognize and remember the car. Our brains are hardwired to create a memory when we notice something that's out of the ordinary. It's down to a psychological principle called the von Restorff effect. It's also called the isolation effect, which says that when there's a group of identical items, the one that's different stands out. It becomes easier to notice and remember. And as we like to say in marketing, memories make sales. In the 60s and 70s, Mini exported a limited number of cars to the US, but was pulled out of the market in 1978 due to tighter safety regulations regarding minimum size and weight for cars on US highways. The US was and always will be notoriously hard to crack for European brands, and Mini was no exception. Yes, they retreated, but they would be back, this time with a psychology-driven playbook that helped them conquer the US market. Let's fast forward to the United States of America in the year 2001. The Harry Potter films were about to debut, the iPod was launched, Wikipedia was unleashed on the internet, and the Mini was finally ready to take another swing at the US market. In 1994, BMW had purchased the Rover Group, which was a collection of British car brands that included our old friend Mini. They sold off many of these brands, but BMW saw the value in the Mini brand and kept it around. So while Mini now had the backing of a big, well-funded automaker, this car known for its small size also had a big problem. The American automotive market was dominated by a bigger is better mentality. So Mini had to use some clever marketing psychology to break through in a market ruled by comparatively giant cars like the Ford F-Series and the Chevy Silverado trucks, the two most popular cars in the US. Because Americans don't have the constraints of tiny London parking spots, winding country lanes, or expensive fuel prices, the Mini's small size didn't make much sense for most American drivers. The US is huge, houses are far apart, and most of the driving is done on wide, straight interstates, fighting for space with 18-wheelers. The requirements and challenges of US roads makes having a larger car built for comfort and not nimbleness a big safety and experience advantage. A long road trip in the UK, where I live now, is considered like 2 hours, whereas in the US, for example, I would drive 13 hours nonstop just to get home for Thanksgiving. And that's longer than it takes to drive from Southampton at the bottom of England to Edinburgh at the top of Scotland, which is on top of England if you're not that familiar with the UK map. Now, Mini knew all of this, but they made a curious strategic choice. Their marketing didn't run away from its biggest sales objection. It leaned into its relatively tiny size. But why? Well, because consciously or not, they knew about a psychology principle called the blemishing effect. The blemishing effect is a psychological principle that says when we show a little negative information alongside positive information, we can make something seem more attractive. Mini took advantage of this effect by being upfront about its disadvantage in the American market, its Mini size. For example, the Mini was so small it would fit on the roof rack of many popular SUVs. So they did just that. They drove a Mini around Midtown Manhattan on top of a big Chevy SUV. They did a ton of visual gags in places like airports, where an 8-foot-tall trash can was stuck next to a Mini ad that read, "Makes everything else seem a little too big." Lots of brands use the blemishing effect to make themselves more lovable, whether they realize it or not. Pringles packaging, for example, the long tennis ball-like tube, has always been a quirky, unique feature of the product, and they've leaned heavily into it for years. Their longtime tagline, until just a few years ago, was, "Once you pop, you can't stop," referencing the popping sound that the plastic top makes when you pull it off the can. And in their 2023 Super Bowl ad, they showed people getting their hands stuck at the bottom of its long tubular can, trying to grab the very last Pringle chip. Heinz Ketchup is another brand that highlights what could be considered a negative feature of its product, that it takes a really long time for its ketchup to come out of the bottle, as a positive. And they really lean into slow as something that they can own. Because really, what other brand sees slow as a good thing? For example, in 2022, Heinz partnered with the Waze traffic app to track how fast Waze users were driving. When the app recognized a car was stuck in traffic, traveling at the exact speed of Heinz ketchup coming out of the bottle, that's 0.05 kilometers an hour if you didn't know, the car on the map would transform into a bottle of Heinz ketchup, and the drivers would get a voucher for free Heinz and a free Burger King Whopper sent to their email inbox. Now, if you want to use the blemishing effect, start by talking to and listening to your customers. Is there a quirk in your product that they love to hate? If so, don't rush to change it. It could be something that makes your product lovable and distinct. See what happens when you lean into your flaws and blemishes instead of running away. Thank you for listening to the Choice Hacking Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it. It takes 20 plus hours to create every episode, and it helps the podcast find new listeners when it has more ratings and reviews. And don't forget, you can learn more about behavioral science and psychology applied to business when you subscribe to the free Choice Hacking Ideas newsletter. You'll join more than 8,000 brilliant entrepreneurs and marketing folks from companies like Google, Coke, Disney, and McDonald's who get my newsletter. To sign up, just visit choicehackingideas.com. That's choicehackingideas.com. Until next time.
I hit record a drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for